What is going on, everyone? Welcome into Big Time Football Talk. So, I want to go over some draft scenarios. It's interesting for this draft. I think, Trevor Lawrence to the Jags has got to be the lock at the first overall pick. But the second overall pick, it's very interesting with the New York Jets. It makes you wonder if they want to go Sewell. Sewell, outstanding tackle. Many think is a generational type tackle prospect. But I have a little bit of concern watching, some tape on him. And as far as pass protection goes, I think as far as run blocking, he's just outstanding. His ability to pull and, maintain leverage and drive through blocks and knock guys on their behind. But yeah, so Sewell, watch a breakdown, and some people think he could play guard, which would be, if the Jets took him. It'd be a little high to take a guard, but what's what's the value of an elite guard that can run block? Ask the Colts with Quentin Nelson. I mean, you just can't put a price on a guard that can, obviously pass block pretty well, but is just outstanding run blocker, and that's Quentin Nelson. So, I mean, Sewell just super talented, and or just play him at tackles, and you have the bookend tackles with the New York Jets, and Darnold will finally get a chance to play with a much improved offensive line, and an offensive line where you're not going to get a lot of pressure coming in from the outside. So, but the order sits as so: Jags number 1, Jets 2, the Dolphins at 3. There's a lot of rumor, the Dolphins will trade out of that pick, and that the Texans will wheel and deal with the Dolphins and get that third overall pick, and will send Watson to Miami. And the Texans with a chance to get a quarterback or get a big time player there. Obviously, that's a roster that's lacking talent a little bit, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and the defense a little bit lacking too. Also aging. J.J. Watt, it makes you wonder what happens with him in this offseason. So, but yeah, then Falcons rumored to take quarterback, whether it's Justin Fields, Zach Wilson. I really love Justin Fields. I think Zach Wilson. I hear some maturity issues, which is concerning. When I hear maturity issues, I think Manziel, I think Vince Young, I think Jamarcus Russell, because you got to be mature, you got to be ready to work when you get in the NFL. I mean, talent, like I said, talent just doesn't win out in the NFL. You're the story of, Vince Young not working as hard as he probably should, or Jamarcus Russell not really studying and watching film. It's a really concerning issue, and it's something that I could see, being a problem from, Zach Wilson if if you keep hearing about these maturity issues and whatnot. And, yeah, so. And the Bengals at 5, the dream scenario for Cincinnati would be for Sewell to fall to the 5 pick. And, the Bengals would get them a franchise tackle to protect Joe Burrow, who, obviously is going to try to recover from an injury because of, taking repeated hits, and, this hit leading to, torn ACL and MCL, I think it was. And the Eagles at 6, a lot of rumors that they would take a wide receiver, but I think, this is a team. Do you really want to go receiver? You got Jalen Reagor. He was pretty solid as a rookie. It makes you wonder, do you want to go defense, Micah Parsons, or I don't know. You could go edge rusher. Yeah, I like some of the edge rushers. I'm not super I don't know. That's the thing. I think a lot of people are right there with me as far as I don't think there's an edge rusher that's elite that's like a top 5 can't miss. The Myles Garrett. There's not the Chase Young. I think next year Kayvon Thibodeau from Oregon could be that guy. But there's a lot of guys that are pretty solid. I mean, Rousseau, he's a guy I liked on tape. He was very productive last year, opted out this year, but he's a guy that really is concerning in the sense that he really relies on his length so much, and which is good. I mean, at 6'7", 250, 260, whatever he weighs in at, I think he'll be a good player, but I don't know if he could ever become that elite dominant pass rusher without, the power. Carlos Basham is a guy that's really looked good in Senior Bowl practice, but everyone's kind of had him as to a mid to late round. Could be a solid edge rusher in the NFL. No one I really thinks he could be elite. I think Joseph Asai from Texas is a guy that's very interesting in this draft because he's a guy that's I think he doesn't realize how good he could be because he's very fast, got a great motor. I think moved from like middle linebacker or something last year, and then was playing more like an outside linebacker DN this year. But yeah, he's a guy I think that could have a very high ceiling and could be a guy you're talking about in the NFL. People will be like, yeah, he had some concerns and not, I mean, was productive, but on tape he just kind of like wasn't always disciplined. I mean, I haven't really dove deep into him, but it seems like there was a couple games I watched where he could have had even more tackles for loss if he kind of stayed disciplined and like used better leverage. I think he kind of reminds me of Clay Matthews in the sense that Clay Matthews you could see was uber talented, and even though he's a first round, still a little bit under the radar, but there was the questions. I think that's Osai. I think he's a guy that with work ethic and really reaching his potential, you could say, maybe there's guys like that every year. Maybe we were kind of wrong, and maybe we looked at the flaws a little bit too closely. That to me, that's Joseph Osai, the edge rusher from Texas, and so I think he could be a great player if he improves some things and gets better and reaches his potential. Because in a team like Texas that recruits so well, it's odds are you're going to have one, or if not him, Cosme the tackle, or Stearns. You're going to have a few guys that end up being so very talented in the NFL. You see USC. I mean, USC hasn't been elite, but as well as they recruit, I mean, odds are one of these guys is going to pan out in the NFL. I mean, you saw like Everson Griffins, Jarrell Casey's. These weren't guys like Everson Griffin was a guy that wasn't like wasn't like the can't miss, but you saw he's had a very strong very strong NFL career. Like it's like the last 3 years we've kind of been spoiled with the DN prospects, whether it's Nick Bosa, Joey Bosa, Chase Young, Myles Garrett. You knew these guys were just freaks and productive. I mean, even Clowney was in that discussion. His NFL career a little bit up and down with work ethic issues and injuries, but yeah, I mean, some of these, this edge rusher class is, little in question as far as, what guy can really reach elite status. So, but, I've been watching, Senior Bowl practice, if you guys have tuned into that. Thomas Graham is another under the radar cornerback from Oregon. Trey Norwood, these guys that have looked good in one-on-ones, going against some pretty good receivers too. I mean, Tylan Wallace and Nico Collins. Nico Collins, I think, is an under the radar guy from Michigan. I mean, he's never going to be a quick twitch, underneath catch guy, but he got the ability to go deep and make contested catches. That was his game at Michigan. I think that's going to be his game in the NFL. And Tylan Wallace looks to be like one of the more finished products at Oklahoma State. Great hands, looks like a great route runner. I don't think he's going to wow people with speed, but has the ability to stretch the field and make the underneath slant routes and catches underneath. So I think Tylan Wallace is a guy that you might see go second or third round. I think when it's all said and done, he'll have a pretty strong solid NFL career. I think he could be a mid-round steal that you'll get production from years from. So, yeah, I just can't wait. I'm so excited for the draft. The draft's one of my favorite times of the year. So, Tom Brady, versus Mahomes will be the Super Bowl. I want to touch on the Super Bowl a little bit, and this is kind of the dude that's been the top of the mountain, the alpha, the king of the NFL as far as quarterbacks versus a guy that's kind of rising up. The best analogy I heard was it's kind of like Michael Jordan versus LeBron. The matchup we never got. A little bit, Kobe, Michael Jordan's kind of like the young elite guy, the guy rising up versus the guy that's been the king of the mountain for a long time. And it'll be such a great matchup to watch, and it makes you wonder if Tom Brady can get this done and continue to say he's the the main man in the NFL, the top dog, and go against, Mahomes, who, has a guy that has a chance to have a long, very storied, very, very solid, not solid, but very great NFL Hall of Fame type career. And, should be a great matchup. Be interesting to see, the Tampa Bay defense. Can they slow down Mahomes? Because that offense, when it gets going, can be so lethal and just so hard to stop. So many weapons. And I guess there's rumor that they're supposed to have Sammy Watkins back, and then Tampa Bay is supposed to have Antoine Winfield back. And, it's likely to just get their other safety that got hurt during the game, Whitehead, back. So should be a super fun Super Bowl. I mean, that's obviously when you hear Mahomes and Brady, that's enough to get people's attention and get people hyped for this game. So, but yeah, the Chiefs defense playing well going against Tom Brady, and Tampa, in a way, I think they're a little lucky to get by Green Bay. There was a lot of things that really went Tampa Bay's way, and not just Matt LaFleur kicking that field goal and giving them the ball back so they could run the clock out. There was before the half they weren't playing deep and playing a prevent, and they got burnt for a easy touchdown to Scotty Miller over Kevin King. That really sticks out to me, because that's just not being prepared. That's just not well coaching, and especially you got to know a situation like that when it's the NFC Championship game. You have to know that you can't get beat deep and give, in games like that, cheap. You can't give away cheap, easy touchdowns. It comes back to bite you. And, the second half, Tom Brady was throwing the picks. One went off of Mike Evans' hands. I think he should have caught it. But, 3 picks in the second half. You let Green Bay crawl back and hang around. I think, Tampa Bay almost tried to lose it. But at the end of the day, they did enough to win the game. And that's the bottom line when it comes to the playoffs. Can you do enough to find a way to win the game? Because, at the end of the day, especially in playoffs, people don't really care whether it was ugly or not, because you're, in the NFC Championship, especially playing Aaron Rodgers, it's freezing cold. At the end of the day, it's wins really don't come cheap in this case. So they'll take this win, and they'll look to build off it, and obviously try to play better and avoid playing like they did, because if you have a second half like they did against the Packers, against the Chiefs, it's going to be game over. I mean, just Mahomes will make you pay for 3 interceptions. They'll turn that into points, and they'll turn it into points quickly. So I got to touch on this. Being a Lions fan, I don't really dig into the Lions too much, because I try to, I try to be like a national guy. I want to talk about, the broad scope of the NFL, the broad scope of college football, the elite teams, the average teams, the good players, from all teams, because, this is a college football and NFL talk, but I got to dive into the Stafford things, because I feel like I have good knowledge about this, and I want to share to you guys my thoughts on this. So I've discussed this a lot, and I really believe the Lions should shoot for 2 first-round picks here, because, Matthew Stafford, many people around the NFL probably may not give him their respect, because he hasn't really won the big games in Detroit. Obviously hasn't been to a Super Bowl. Obviously hasn't won a playoff game with the Lions. And, his numbers kind of flawed a little bit, a lot coming later in games. That's the nickname. Well, he gets the nickname sometimes, Pat Stafford. But bottom line, he is so talented, and has such a good arm, and at times can be very accurate, and at times can, just make big plays, and does a good job of distributing the ball to playmakers in a very, organized and good fashion. So, and really, if you look at, like I said, the 49ers and Colts, that's why the 2 teams that come to mind, those teams are truly just a elite, not even necessarily elite, but a good quarterback away from winning the Super Bowl. If you look at the 49ers roster, they'll get Nick Bosa back. I mean, that defense is loaded. Kyle Shanahan, one of the best play callers in the National Football League. He'll know how to use Stafford, and they got weapons. Brandon Ayuk will go into second year at receiver. And Stafford, when he comes in there, that team is legitimately poised to make a Super Bowl run. I think should be the favorite to win the Super Bowl 49ers or Colts. He goes to the Colts. One of the best O-lines in football. I mean, you got the best offensive lineman in Quentin Nelson, and you got young receivers. Michael Pittman Jr., I think, is a guy that you could see at wide receiver break out in year 2, and he needs a guy like Stafford to get him the football. Zach Pascal, solid. Mo Alley Cox, solid tight ends. I mean, you look at the Colts roster at running back, Jonathan Taylor, Naheem Hines, guys that can catch passes, run between the tackles. Taylor, not necessarily the pass catcher that Hines is, but point being, Stafford likes to dump it off. He can throw it underneath. He can throw it deep. He can throw it accurately. And the Colts there's no weakness to that roster, really. And I think this year, Phillip Rivers was really the guy that held them back from winning a Super Bowl. I think if there's I don't even know if you had, I think Jared Goff, if he's even, I think Stafford probably is better than Goff. I think even Goff leads this Colts team to a Super Bowl. There really was no weakness. I'm going to reiterate that because, I mean, good safety, good young safeties, Rhodes is getting up there. Corner might be the weakness, if anything, on the team, but, Rock Ya-Sin has been solid. Linebackers, one of the best linebacking unit and solid D-line. I mean, the DeForest Buckner trade really panned out. Buckner is a solid, D tackle, D end, and Justin Houston still going somewhat strong in his older age now. But yeah, the Colts I see is a great fit. Plus, I could see him, wearing the Colts uniform. So, but yeah. I would shoot for 2 first-round picks, likely, Denver, San Francisco, because those have San Fran has the 12th pick, Denver has the 9th pick. You want to try to get as high of a first-round pick, this year as you can, because I'd like to combine a Justin Fields pick. Like the dream scenario, Fields sits there at 7, you take Fields at 7, and then at 9 or 12, you get you a defensive stud, whether it's Micah Parsons or Surtain. Yes, I said Surtain in a corner again because, if Okuda's still young, give him time. If you can combine him with a guy like Surtain, I think that could be a deadly corner combination. And frankly, with the way the league's going, you need cover corners. You can't have enough corners. I mean, Deion Sanders said that because he played corner, but you can't really have enough corners in the National Football League. That's the bottom line. And you have a guy that in Surtain that's really a finished product, coached by Nick Saban. I mean, he's as good fundamentally as. I mean, this is a good cornerback draft class. I could dive a little bit into that. I mean, Jace Horn's a guy I think he's a freak athletically. I mean, but I think Surtain's a finished product as far as fundamentals. He may not even test the best, but you can tell he's been coached up really well. This hand usage and his ability to play the ball, Nick Saban does as good a job down there coaching up DBs. And, I talked about Thomas Graham. I think he's a guy that's a sleeper. I mean, Bynum from Cal looked okay in Senior Bowl drills. Trey Norwood. And then, who else is up there? I mean, I think it's a position that has some good depth. And, yeah, I mean, Paulson Adebo opted out this year, but you remember when he played the year before, he's a guy that's got some good length, and yeah, he's a talented guy too. But yeah, it'll be interesting to the cornerback class, how it gets evaluated. And I think the safety classes got some guys that didn't necessarily play at the not the LSU, the Bama guys, a lot of guys you see the top-notch safeties, but guys like Andre Cisco from Syracuse. He's a guy that I think he has good ball skills, but I think he could even improve his ball skills and get even better, because there was times he was got the interception from recovering and going back and getting the ball, and looks like a really good open field tackler, does a good job of taking the proper angles to make tackles. And Trevor Mulrig's, I think, a guy that's super talented, that kind of just jumps off the tape because he just flows to the ball quick and effortlessly makes plays and pass breakups and effortlessly makes tackles. But Yeah, it shows, how good Nick Saban and, like when Urban Meyer was at Ohio State, it's no coincidence why they produce so much NFL talent. And I think at LSU they have such good, defensive back coaching. I think a lot of these guys from, other schools like South Carolina's produced some, whether it's, Stephon Gilmore, and then Jace Horn this year, and TCU has some guys that they don't look like they've been coached up as well, and they have the skill set, and makes you wonder if they played at the Alabama, the LSU, and I think that's some of the bias when guys rank draft prospects. They give the benefit of the doubt to a lot of the SEC guys, especially sometimes the Alabama, the LSU guys, the Clemson guys that have shown out on the big stage as well. If you're a player evaluating an LSU player, like in the sense, you saw Patrick Queen from LSU rise last year because you got to see down the stretch him play well against, some of the better competition when you play the Alabamas, when you play the Clemsons, you see who else? The Oklahomas. You see him against better offenses and better players, and you get better gauge and you get more of a bias because all scouts watch that game. I think some guys when they go back, whether even it's me or other guys, they evaluate maybe half the games they play. They don't evaluate all, and they watch them play against some of the better schools, like in the when you watch Sewell. I think a lot of guys will watch him play Auburn. Who else? Stanford maybe. Some of the the better schools. But yeah, I think there's still that bias about that. But yeah, so. But Mel Kiper has several wide receivers going in his top 5 to 6. And which is, very interesting, and shows that, the value of receiver is really going back up in the modern NFL. And, this wide receiver class isn't really filled with a bunch of, big physical guys. But I think Jalen Waddle was number 1 on my big board because look at Tyreek Hill, how valuable he is to the Chiefs. I mean, 4'2". We're not